All aboard! Next stop, Hell. Hello, One Piece lovers, and welcome to my tour of the delightful, inescapable prison, Impel Down. I will be showing you the lovely vistas of the Crimson Hell, the majestic animals of the Wild Beast Hell, a portrait of dietary might for a healthier figure in the Starvation Hell, the rejuvenating, luxurious heat of the Blazing Hell, and what's next is our little secret. These are my first impressions of the Impel Down arc, where I'm actually going to be getting into what I loved about this story and reacting to the twists and turns that make this particular arc so fun to watch. To be upfront, I really enjoyed this arc. It wasn't what I was expecting it to be at all, and I was pleasantly surprised with how well it advanced the overall drama of the series. So, thank you for joining me on this continuing watch along. There will be spoilers from here on out, so, you've been warned. Now, let's sail on. We begin this arc from a couple different angles which set the stage for the igniting events of the soon-to-be chaos. To begin though, we see Ace and Garp conversing, and we get some nice insight into Ace's mindset in relation to Whitebeard. Now, I'm not sure if this is something that I completely missed in Ace's prior interaction with Buggy the Clown, which we see a flashback of in this arc, but Ace states at the end of Amazon Lily that Whitebeard is his father, and I nearly jumped out of my seat in surprise. However, immediately at the start of this arc, Ace clarifies that Dragon is his biological father, but Ace has no love for that heinous criminal and instead views Whitebeard as his true father. I'd imagine that the feeling is mutual and that Whitebeard views Ace as a son, which I'm sure is informing his actions against the world government as this arc unfolds. Whitebeard isn't just fighting to save a crewmate, but his own son, which leads me to wonder why the world government is making such an event out of executing Ace, but we'll touch on that later. The next big setup we get is that the aforementioned Captain Buggy has been captured and is in Impel Down. We see his crew scheming to try and break him out, but eventually abandoning the notion. I was really excited to see Buggy back in the action here. He has obviously been teased as having some larger role in the plot since entering the Grand Line, although I didn't expect to run into him in a prison, but I think it was a really unique direction to take his character rather than just hunting down Luffy and attacking him again with his pitiful crew. We are also shown some real interesting tidbits about Impel Down before Luffy's adventure really gets going. The first thing that jumped out at me was the silhouette of a minotaur roaming the prison grounds, which freaked me out, but what really took the cake was the silhouette of Crocodile, that sandy bitch. I had no idea he was still alive. I just assumed he'd been killed, but I guess that's on me because this arc reinforces that no one ever really dies, especially not from Alabasta. Luffy infiltrates Impel Down with the help of Boa Hancock and hides away at the first chance he gets. Hancock is surprisingly absent from most of this arc. I didn't expect too much from her, and she serves her role, but the vast majority of the time, she's just riding the world's slowest elevator. She gets a pretty funny moment when she thinks Luffy whispered "I love you" to her, and then proceeds to pretty much have a heart attack, but after that, I won't be talking about her again for a little while. This is when Luffy begins his descent to the lower levels of Impel Down, which is repeatedly referred to as Hell in this arc, which I thought was really interesting. I suppose Oda is playing on Dante's Divine Comedy and the Rings of Hell with Impel Down, which makes sense with some of the more demonic-looking characters around, particularly Warden Magellan. But the prison and the standard guard uniforms definitely give off some serious Nazi vibes, which again, I thought was an interesting choice, emphasizing the cruelty of the world government. The infiltration has begun. I thought it was really fun watching Luffy actually be sneaky with his powers. I was worried he was just gonna full-blown charge down the levels at first, and while that was an inevitability with his personality, I thought it was refreshing seeing him be cautious at the start, which reinforced just how dangerous this prison was. Luffy can't afford a slip-up, and once again he's on his own, without any crew or established character to work with. However, Oda seems to have learned his lesson from Amazon Lily and doesn't have Luffy stay on his own for very long, which I think was the smart move. In fact, this whole initial descent down the levels is a reunion extravaganza. Pretty quickly, Luffy runs into Buggy, who is executing an escape plan of his own, and after some hijinks, the pair decide to team up. Apparently, the armband Luffy has been wearing since the end of Thriller Bark is some kind of treasure map that Buggy has been looking for, which is really why Buggy agrees to team up. Not that he had any real choice, but I think this was a good way to instigate this alliance because it's true to Buggy's selfish roots. I really enjoy the interaction between Buggy and Luffy at this point in the series. They're both in a much different situation than when they were last together in Log Town. Buggy was always a comedic character, but he is a walking slapstick bit at every turn in this arc, and I really enjoyed his presence both with Luffy and also with the next character we are reintroduced to. But first, Luffy and Buggy make their way through the Crimson Hell, which is where we spend by far the least amount of time in this arc, since really it's more of a visually horrifying level that doesn't leave much room open for any narrative exploration. So we quickly move on to the Wild Beast Hell, where we spend a good deal more time. Now, I was not expecting to ever see this wax weirdo again, and it was definitely a surprise for him to become so integral to this arc. Mr. 3 was always one of my least favorite villains. I just thought he was kind of annoying, and while he remains kind of annoying in this arc, making him the underdog trying to break free from prison, rather than the overconfident moron he was at Little Garden, was the perfect tweak needed to make him kind of redeemable. He also ends up as Buggy's partner or sidekick in their own selfish journey for escape, and I think the two of them bounce off each other really well. Talk about a match I never expected to see, but Mr. 3 and Buggy have compatible enough personalities, so I think it was an inspired choice for Oda to tie them together so closely in this arc. They really become inseparable. Now. Mr. 3's imprisonment here got me thinking about another Baroque Works agent who I dared not expect to still be alive, but we'll get to that in a moment. I thought that level 2, the Wild Beast Hell, was pretty fun. We had a couple of nice bits with Luffy and Buggy working together against these weird-ass animals, and I don't think the level overstayed its welcome. The Sphinx noodle joke didn't really land for me. It kind of felt like, oh boy, I need to make this creature wacky, but don't really have anything that clever. So by the time we got down to the lower level, I was happy to see what was next. Although, the Starvation Hell is where it began to occur to me that these levels of hell just weren't going to be that interesting, but I don't really think there's a real problem with that, since these levels are just meant to be tiny environments to keep the charge downward to free Ace more dynamic. This level is one massive hot desert where the prisoners are kept near death by barely feeding them, and this is where we find a beautiful song and dance routine about being queer, sung by none other than Mr. 2. Bon Clay is back, baby. He's alive. Buggy and Mr. 3 save Bon Clay, who seems completely unaffected by the heat of level 3, and upon telling him about Luffy's reason for being in Impel Down, he immediately dances off to go help him. God damn, this made me so happy. Since we've just been reintroduced to 3 characters from the past, I want to touch on something I alluded to earlier and also mentioned in my Amazon Lily video. I think that reintroducing Buggy, Mr. 3, Bon Clay, and eventually Crocodile through Impel Down was such a clever and organic way for Oda to bring these characters back into the story all at once. But, most importantly to the writing, reintroducing these established characters gives Luffy a new crew of sorts that he can bounce off of. It's my opinion that within the Amazon Lily arc, Oda struggled to give Luffy much to do before Boa Hancock had been somewhat established in the narrative. You'll notice that once she was established, then Luffy's entire story immediately revolved around his interactions with her, because Luffy is generally a static character. While Luffy does incrementally grow throughout the series, generally he inspires change in those around him rather than changing himself. So, if Luffy isn't going on a quest of self-discovery and is instead acting in his typical fashion just with a new mission, it's difficult to make that as engaging as One Piece usually is, since for the majority of the narrative, it's an ensemble story with some dynamic growth typically happening to other characters. Thus, by putting Luffy in contact with Hancock, he can change her from how we've seen her established. Likewise, in the Impel Down arc, there is no time to establish new character relationships, and it wouldn't make much sense since Luffy is in a rush. Instead, by using characters like Buggy, and especially Mr. 2, Oda already has a shorthand for those relationships, and Luffy is able to bounce off of them effectively. Notice how Mr. 1 is shown to the audience long before he's freed? That's because freeing Mr. 1 and having him join in Luffy's break-in wouldn't make much sense. Luffy admits to not knowing anything about Mr. 1 later on, so on a narrative level, it would have been more of a hindrance to have Mr. 1 join Luffy earlier since they had no established relationship and the story would have needed to waste time building one up. That's all to say, I really think what Oda did here was clever. After Amazon Lily, I was worried how the story would continue with a lone wolf Luffy, but somehow, I didn't see a prison filled with pirates as the ripe opportunity it was to provide a supporting cast. While all this chaos unfolds on the upper levels, we see some interesting information unfolding in the Eternal Hell. Ace is imprisoned alongside the Fishman warlord Jimbei, whose little goatee I love, and I think that's finally the last warlord we haven't met yet. He seems like a pretty dope dude, and his screen time gets slowly built up in this arc to the point where I can't imagine he isn't going to be an important player for the rest of this saga. He was imprisoned because he refused to fight in the upcoming war with Whitebeard, who he views as more than just a powerful pirate, but a man who uses his influence to protect islands in the New World, such as Fishman Island, by claiming them as his territory. Jimbei is worried that if Whitebeard dies, then those protected islands will once again descend into chaos. I thought that was a really interesting tidbit on how the New World works. Presumably, that's how all the 4 emperors operate. I wonder if the Navy really has any strongholds in the New World, or if they essentially have no government operation there, and it is instead largely ruled by these 4 pirates. Anyway, Hancock finally arrives down at the lower level, and after causing a bit of a riot with her beauty, she uses the opportunity to pass along a message to Ace that Luffy is here and coming to free him. Unsurprisingly, Ace is very worried for his brother. Meanwhile, on level 3, Luffy and Bon Clay have a really sweet reunion. Bon Clay shows up disguised as Zoro, reminding the audience of his clone fruit abilities, and Luffy reflects on the last time he saw Bon Clay, claiming that he thought he had died and that he's so happy to see him again. I really love this moment. I don't know why I'm obsessed with Mr. 2, but he's just such a fun character, and he's extremely loyal to Luffy in a way that the other 2 twats running around on this level simply are not. We also get a reveal of the Minotaur, whose silhouette we saw at the beginning, and in typical One Piece fashion, it looks doofy as fuck. We also see the power difference between Luffy and Bon Clay in the showdown with the Minotaur, as it kind of messed Bon Clay up, while Luffy is able to handle it fairly easily. Afterwards, Bon Clay takes Luffy to an entrance to level 4, but the pair of comedic goofs come rushing over, chased by the Minotaur, and the ensuing battle sends everyone barreling down into the blazing hell, much to Buggy and Mr. 3's extreme grief. It's on level 4 where things really heat up. Thank you. This is where we get the fight between Luffy and Warden Magellan, who has been so hyped up it seems like he's one of the most powerful people in the world government. So, since we're going to see this fight unfold, let me backtrack and describe the staff at Impel Down a bit now that they're finally going to be important. Warden Magellan is a poison man, and his ability is that he's made of poison, breathes poison, and can manipulate his body seemingly any way he likes. General rule of thumb is that if you touch him, you die. He's a bit of a hard ass around the prison, but his most defining character trait is that he shits a lot. This joke really didn't land for me. I thought maybe it was going somewhere or would pay off in an unexpected way, but no. It's just poop jokes galore around this guy. He acts as though he can't control it. It's pretty much a running gag that he has constant diarrhea because he keeps eating poison, which again, I don't know, sounds like a really dumb reason. But then this doesn't come up at all in the final conflict. It's like this defining character trait totally vanished because really, it's not something that mattered at all and was just a gag that Oda beat into the ground. I like Magellan, but he seemed to be handled a bit sloppily. While I'm at it, let me mention the Vice Warden, someone else with a reoccurring gag that I didn't think was that funny, but at least gets a payoff. Hannibal is the overtly power-hungry Vice Warden whose one real gag is that whenever he says something, it always slips out in a way that demonstrates how he wants to become Warden over Magellan, then he corrects himself. His entire personality is that of a corporate stooge trying to climb the ladder and advance his career. He was somewhat of an enjoyable character, but in my opinion, there's just too much time spent with him in the early section of this arc, and he became far more annoying than amusing. However, I'll talk about him again later. The other 2 major employees here are Sal Death, who commands the Blue Gories, and that's all he does, and then there's the immensely horny Sadie, who commands the 4 Demon Guards and gets off on delivering pain. Not much to say about these 2, so let's move back into the action. Pretty quickly after falling onto level 4, Magellan arrives to stop the break-in, and right away it becomes apparent that he was not just hyped up, this dude is dumb powerful. He even hits his own men with poison since they got in his way, all in an attempt to get Luffy. Mr. 3 and Buggy have long since made a break for it, and even Bon Clay is torn between running and staying to help Luffy. I think that the Luffy versus Magellan fight in this hell setting was pretty entertaining, and I thought it was nice to see Luffy really struggling against Magellan because I could not see any way for him to beat a poison man. For a moment in this fight, I thought that the story was just gonna have Luffy's willpower overcome the poison and let him defeat Magellan, which I thought would have been lazy, but Luffy eventually succumbs to the poison and is left for dead. Before Luffy is defeated, Bon Clay has a dramatic choice to make. Watching Luffy struggle against Magellan's poison hydras, he has to choose between running away or staying to die. Ultimately, he makes the tearful decision to run away, which turns out to be the right call because this allows him to persevere and help Luffy after his defeat. Bon Clay puts his powers to use and impersonates Hannibal in order to rescue Luffy from level 5, the freezing hell, and he brings Buggy and Mr. 3 with him, who he had saved earlier from their own stupidity. Bon Clay's goal is to find the King of Queers, Ivankov, who he idolizes and is a rumored miracle worker who was imprisoned in Impel Down years ago but went missing within. If Bon Clay cannot find Ivankov in time, then Luffy will succumb to the poison and die. Things go just about as badly as you can imagine for the trio as they dive deeper into hell. They are attacked by a pack of wild wolves, and Buggy and Mr. 3 leave Bon Clay to take the brunt of that attack. For a good deal of time, the clown and his waxy friend are chased around by these wolves while Bon Clay recovers and searches for Luffy. Luffy is in a cell with a bunch of pessimistic prisoners who don't believe in no friendship, but that's when a bloody Bon Clay arrives, claiming he's here to help his friend, and drags Luffy around looking for Ivankov until once again he is attacked by wolves. This time though, Luffy uses his Hakai in order to fend them off before Bon Clay passes out in the snow with a mysterious figure looking over him. Gotta say, this Hakai stuff really seems to come in handy in a plot pinch. Now, this is when things get really interesting. Turns out Ivankov is alive, and he is literally the king, or queen depending on his mood, of level 5.5, a secret paradise in hell. The introduction to Ivan feels like a legit drag show, and it was such a complete tonal shift from everything that had happened recently, it was a really fun break from the drama. Ivan is a devil fruit power holder too, using the hormone fruit in order to change the genders of himself or anyone else, as well as manipulate his body to say, have a giant head. Ivan is taking care of Luffy using this power, but says it will take 2 days for Luffy to recover, and it will take 10 years off of his life, if he even recovers at all. Bon Clay pleads for Ivan to do everything he can to help Luffy, but Ivan says that he just needs to believe in miracles and that Luffy's recovery is out of his hands. From here, we get another Bon Clay moment that steals the show. He stands outside Luffy's room as he recovers, shouting for him to survive for many hours straight until his body is weak and his mouth is gushing blood. The other Nukama Land residents join in, and Luffy wakes up nearly 40 hours quicker than Ivan expected, demanding food. It's a miracle. We then get some extremely interesting background information on Ivan. Turns out he's good friends with Luffy's father Dragon, and was arrested because he was part of the Revolutionary Army. We still don't really know what the revolution is all about, but these slight hints are interesting. I also think that having Luffy be the son of Dragon is a great way for Oda to get the narrative to benefit or challenge Luffy for reasons that are entirely external to him. Just because he is Dragon's son, Ivan is now willing to help save Ace immediately and stage the breakout he'd been planning but wanted to wait longer for. While this is because of who Luffy is, Luffy's father has no impact on who he is or what his goals are. Luffy is still the same old Luffy, but because of Dragon, Oda has crafted a shortcut for Luffy to automatically get allies like Ivan to help him in tough situations like this, when frankly there isn't enough time to develop an interpersonal reason between these characters, and I'm sure his lineage will also be a problem in some respect later on. Before the Great Escape, we also see Ivan pondering what the hell the world's government plan is with Ace's execution, and he brings up some interesting points. Do they know that Ace and Luffy are Dragon's kids? Presumably, since Garp was so open about it at Water 7, they must. So, are they trying to fuck with Whitebeard and Dragon? Doesn't make sense. Something isn't adding up here. But there's no time to worry about any of that because it's bum rush time. Luffy, Ivan, Bon Clay, and the rest of the Newkama rebels break free and head for Ace in the Eternal Hell. Unfortunately, they are too late, and he is already being escorted to Marineford for his execution, so this whole prison invasion pretty much went up in smoke and it's time to break out and head to Navy HQ. But, the trip to the Eternal Hell ain't for nothing, as we get 2 warlords in the breakout squad now. Well, I guess one and a former. Jinbei decides to help Luffy save Ace, and Crocodile isn't one to get left behind, so he joins up as well, which is fucking crazy. Also, Ivan hints at some mysterious, embarrassing past that he has, so now I have another thing to add to the list of things I need to find out about before I die. Great! Thought this clusterfuck couldn't get any more out of hand? Wrong! For some damn reason, Blackbeard and his squad of discount pirates show up at Impel Down and begin fighting their way down the levels. Naturally, Magellan is freaking out at the miraculous survival of Luffy, the freeing of Jinbei and Crocodile, the riot caused by Buggy and Mr. 3, who managed to cartoon hijinks themselves all the way back to level 2, and the arrival of the most recent addition to the Warlords, who is decimating his men. Things are not going well in hell. Who would have guessed? This chaos leads to a character change in Vice Warden Hannibal that was kind of nice for him since he was so annoying throughout this arc. He blocks Luffy at the staircase to level 3 and just continuously gets the shit beat out of him, stalling until Magellan can arrive. He has come to respect Magellan and put aside his desire to usurp him as Warden, but honestly, this felt too little too late for the amount of screen time he had, and by this point I kinda just wanted him to get out of the arc. Also, it's splitting hairs, but I don't know why Luffy wouldn't just push past this guy since he was easily clobbering him. He just kept waiting for him to stand back up for no reason. If you're in a rush, then just move, man. But of course, it was done to set up the surprise reveal of Blackbeard. The first time he and Luffy have met since Jaya, and oh boy, was this scene something. Luffy comes to the realization that this person he had a connection with at Jaya, the man who told him that the Sky Island was real and that the time would never come when pirates wouldn't have dreams, is Blackbeard, the man responsible for Ace's imprisonment and coming execution. Blackbeard explains some things to Luffy and really hammers home that if it weren't for Ace, then Luffy would be the one heading for the execution block. Ace saved Luffy's life by battling Blackbeard, and thus, Luffy is in part responsible for the current situation as well. Luffy's anger boils over and he delivers a jet pistol to Blackbeard's gut. However, Blackbeard counters with his own powers, nullifying Luffy's rubber abilities. The impasse that Luffy is at right now finally made it clear to me why such importance has been placed on Hakai in recent arcs. If Luffy is going to stand any chance against Blackbeard, he is going to have to master Hakai, since he cannot rely on his powers at all. At least, that's what I assume is gonna have to happen. But, Blackbeard and Luffy pause their fight for now, since each have other pressing matters to attend to. Luffy and crew escape upstairs, while Blackbeard confronts Magellan, and his entire crew gets utterly fucked up. I don't know what their plan was, but they are force-fed shit by Magellan as he pushes right through them to give chase to the escaping prisoners. Kinda really weird. Magellan is gaining on everyone, and it is going to be impossible to escape without some kind of confrontation with this demon. So, Ivan has Inazuma use his scissor powers to cut apart the stairwell from level 3 to level 2 in order to confront Magellan and buy everyone more time. This results in a pretty fun battle, with Ivan using his wink attacks to keep Magellan at bay. In the end though, even the mighty queer with the huge head succumbs to Magellan's poison, and the warden flies up to level 2 with no problem. While on level 2, Luffy has run back into Buggy and Mr. 3. He says he's happy that they're okay, and their stunned, heartfelt reactions to Luffy's kindness despite their treachery makes me laugh. These two need to get a grip. This is when Mr. 3 finally comes in handy though, as his Wax powers make for a decent defense against Magellan's poison. While everyone else heads out of Impel Down, planning to steal a Navy ship and book it, Luffy stays behind with his new Wax armor, which he apparently thinks is very cool, in order to fight Magellan. While Luffy is able to deliver some solid hits, Magellan just ups his power to essentially turn into a walking acid man, and once again it's clear that when it comes to physical attacks, Magellan is virtually invincible. So they all make a break for it as the Warden of Hell chases them, and oh good, there are no Navy ships left for anyone to steal. Magellan called ahead to the Navy and told them to back the fuck up so they didn't look real dumb and just let an army of escapees commandeer their ships. I thought this was a really great inclusion for this arc. It was a basic but smart move for Magellan, and I'm glad Oda included it as one final obstacle to overcome because it also showcases just how powerful Jinbei is in the water. With the help of Crocodile, Mr. One, and especially the great Captain Buggy, a Navy ship has been captured and escape is possible. Before Magellan can murder everyone still in Impel Down, and let me just say, this man has to be the greatest mass murderer we've seen in the series yet, Jinbei summons a school of whale sharks to wondrously guide all the escapees to freedom, but the gates of justice are still sealed. You already know where I'm going with this. Bon Clay. Bon Clay! Throughout this entire escape, once everyone got aboard the Navy ship, I was wondering where Mr. 2 was, and this reveal was heartbreaking. For him to have stayed behind, using his powers in order to open the gates of justice so that everyone else can escape, is so romantic and sad. He disguised himself as Magellan and ordered the gates opened, once again tricking the entire Impel Down staff and completely trolling Magellan in one final, glorious display of his commitment to friendship. When Luffy finds this out from Jinbei, he calls Mr. 2 on a baby transponder snail against his wishes. Luffy asks Bon Clay how many times he has saved him, reflecting on his sacrifice in Alabasta and everything they've been through in Impel Down, and it's true. Mr. 2 is the real hero of this arc. No one would have escaped without his sacrifice, and this time, after he says his farewell and encouragement to Luffy, I truly believe he could be dead. What an excellent character that I was so happy to see return for an even larger spotlight so long after his prior appearance. On the other hand, no one ever seems to die in this series, so maybe he's alive. Luffy does insist to Buggy later on that he is, and we didn't see a body. In the end, Luffy and his crew of escapees are finally free from Impel Down and riding the tug current straight to Marineford to stop Ace's execution, which takes place in just 6 hours. Within this final section, I think there's a tremendous bit of setup for the future, both for the next arc, but I also think for beyond. The first little hint we get comes from Jinbei, who seemingly has some connection to Arlong he's holding off on telling Luffy about. Was he once Arlong's captain or something? Not that I think Luffy would really care, but I'm curious where that'll go. Also, we see that the head jailer, Shiryu of the Rain, who was imprisoned by Magellan for his cruelty, and who I haven't talked about at all in this arc because he's utterly superfluous to the story being told, and only exists to set up events for the future, joins Blackbeard's crew. I think that's great because his design is actually pretty decent, and the rest of Blackbeard's crew feels like some of the lamest designs in the whole series. Was this Blackbeard's whole reason for invading the prison? How are they gonna get out past Magellan? What the hell was the plan here? Who knows? Then we have some tremendous development with the ever-courageous Captain Buggy. The Navy calls up the commandeered ship and singles out who they believe were the leaders of the breakout, Luffy and Buggy. The Navy uncovered all the history on Buggy, that he was a member of Gold Roger's crew, and that he is a, quote, sworn brother of red-haired Shanks. The Navy now has its eyes on Buggy, which freaks him out at first, until the rest of the escapees begin to praise his reputation. This, naturally, goes to his head, and he begins to think he can defeat Whitebeard to become king of the pirates, which is so classic, and gets Buggy to agree to charge in with his men to Marineford. Works for me. And does this ally Crocodile and Buggy both want to take Whitebeard down? Since all the prisoners don't share the same goal, it will be interesting to see how things shake out. Finally, we see Ace touch down at Marineford, with Sengoku awaiting him. That's it for Luffy's adventure in this arc, but just like in Amazon Lily, we get a glimpse at what the hell is going on with the other Straw Hats during this time, so let me briefly talk about that since it does seem important. Based on these little sightings of the Straw Hats, it appears to me that they are actually going to be out of the picture for a good chunk of time. I don't see any world where they miraculously arrive at the end of the Marineford arc to help Luffy in a pinch. These guys are all missing the war, which I have mixed feelings about, although some of these developments seem interesting. Nami is going to learn more about the science of weather from her new Sky Island researcher friend. It seems a little odd of her to delay for so long, but it could lead to a serious power-up. We see Frankie entering the long-built-up Dr. Vegapunk's old laboratory, which will likely give him access to crazy technology. Turns out Sanji is in the kingdom Ivan ruled over and has become in touch with his inner woman. Chopper spends his time tending to an injured bird with the hopes of riding it off the island when it grows up. how long will that take? Meanwhile, Robin is actually doing something beneficial for others by taking on a government-run slave labor camp and crossing paths with a higher-up in the Revolutionary Army, which could mean big things for the future. Usopp, on the other hand, I don't even know what to say about him. He's got a weird situation going on. Zoro has finally recovered thanks to Perona, but as he tries to leave the island, he's gotta fight some mysterious forces. And finally, Brook decides that he's going to stay and help the desperate people who believe they summon the devil. All in all, I'm not quite sure what to make of more than half of these developments. Some seem to have major plot significance, while others seem to just be filling time. Regardless, when the Straw Hats do finally reunite, it seems like the entire crew will be changed. Hopefully, for the better. And that, my friends, is the end of the Impel Down arc. I hope you enjoyed this tour through Hell, and please make sure to check out the gift shop on your way out. I thought that this arc was pretty damn good. It didn't give me the highest of highs that the Saobody Archipelago arc did, but it still had some killer moments and some wonderfully written characters with insane plot developments that I was not expecting. Crocodile is just back in the series again, something I never would have guessed. I also enjoyed the trip down memory lane with a ton of familiar faces. It was delightful to see Buggy and Mr. 2 again after so long, and even Mr. 3 got some time to shine. But the new faces we meet are just as interesting. I'm very curious if Ivan has largely served his purpose, or if there's still more to come with him, and of course Jinbei is getting hyped the hell up. At the end of the day though, this is Luffy's journey to save Ace, and I thought that this arc did a really good job of raising the stakes in that quest. Luffy came so close, and the pressure is mounting on him, especially after speaking to Blackbeard and finding out what Ace did for him. So, Luffy is beyond dedicated to saving his brother, and I'm starting to worry that the odds are too insurmountable. If Magellan is just a prison warden and he couldn't be defeated, how can the entire world government be? The only hope is Whitebeard. But now I'm just rambling. I totally dug this arc, and I'm very much looking forward to how the war shakes out with the next arc, Marineford, which I will be discussing in 2 weeks. So if you enjoyed this and want to see my thoughts on that, then please consider subscribing if you aren't already so you don't miss it. Thank you, you crazy loons who've made it this far in the video. You guys make this whole process worth it. Do me a favor and let me know what your favorite level of Impel Down was in the comments. I'm curious, and it would give me some algorithm love. I think mine has gotta be level 4, but maybe that's everyone's. Anyway, I've talked for way too long. I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, I'll shut up.